Hello Summoners, welcome back to another ProGuides video. My name is Nathan Ng, and today we'll be talking about our predictions for the 15 most broken champions on patch 12.8. One of the most important things in a constantly evolving game like League of Legends is to be able to adapt to the meta, and that's why we're here for you. If you know what's going to be OP before the patch even hits, you'll be ready to hit the ground running without having to test and see if that one buff or nerf really made that much of a difference. And if you don't know how to play against any of these OP picks, or you're just a little bit rusty, this will give you a few days to brush up on them and some normals are on a smurf. Before we get started, I just want to say that this list is not in any particular order. It's just a list of champions that we predict will be some of the strongest, most influential picks on this patch. We'll be starting things off with Vladimir. Keeping up with their streak of buffing champions that just absolutely do not need it, Vladimir is getting a decently sized buff, having his armor go up from 23 to 27. The thing is, Vladimir is already doing well right now, but even if he wasn't doing well, buffing his early game wouldn't be the way to go about helping him out. Vladimir is a massively hard scaling champion. Once you reach 3 items on him, he can completely wipe out an entire enemy team. Buffing his early game just takes away the risk factor that should come with picking a scaling champion. It's just a little bit too counterintuitive. With this extra armor, he's going to have an even safer laning phase against AD assassins mid, who he already hard counters. It'll also make him more pickable against some of the closer top lane matchups. All in all, he's definitely one of my current favorites for best champions on this patch. Whether you're trying to learn the abuse of broken champions on this list or how to really deal with them when you end up on the wrong side of the matchup, if you want to speed up that process, you should check out ProGuides.com. We have courses from all your favorite streamers and pros like Core JJ, Aframu, and Xmithy to really help you understand how to play your role. And if you want a more personalized experience, we have coaches available 24/7 ready to help you guys become the best. Our coaches are top tier players that have spent years climbing the solo queue ladder to get where they are now, and they're ready to share everything that they've learned with you. Now let's get back on topic, shall we? The last time they gave Chasana a seemingly small buff, her win rate skyrocketed, so we're predicting that she'll be pretty strong here just in case. That being said, take this one with a grain of salt. This time she's getting an AD scaling buff, rather than a durability buff like last time. The reason durability buffs do so much for Chasana is simple. She already deals an insane amount of damage when she commits to an all-in, but for Chasana, going for an all-in literally means jumping in. More durability allows her to fully get off her big burst without the enemy bot lane blowing her up for leaping right into the fight. With all that being said, the extra AD scaling should help the awkward mid-game power trough if you don't hit that snowball hard, but we're gonna call this one a little bit tentative for now. Next up is Sejuani. Sejuani jungle is currently in a slightly above average state, so I could understand the buff that she's getting, if she wasn't already doing so good in the top lane. So rather than making her the flavor of the month jungler, I think this is gonna push her over the edge and make her one of the OP tier top laners for this patch. Less downtime on her passive means even smaller windows where the opponents can actually try to find a window to trade against her, something that's already pretty hard to do in her current state. Again, it's just another champion that we think that shouldn't be buffed in the first place, but if they were gonna buff her, it needed to be in a different area. Just a couple patches ago, we had Poppy listed as one of the best top laners in the game because of her performance in solo queue that has spiked super hard. But without any changes aimed at her, she dropped off just as suddenly as she rose up, and went back to just being a mediocre pick. The buffs she's getting this patch are pretty much all aimed at her utility. So we think she's going to be really strong, but only in specific situations where you can use her to a team with a lot of dashes. In case it wasn't clear from Sejuani and the Vladimir buffs, and me complaining about them, Riot seriously loves taking champions that are doing fine and making them OP, and it's no different with Jhin. He's been sitting at the top 2 or 3 spot out of all the standard marksmen for several months. On 12.7 they nerfed Gale Force and he finally fell from the top, but he's still sitting above a 51% win rate. But even being away from the S tier for a single patch is enough for a reason to immediately buff Jhin. Mord is a pretty good situational pick, where he can be a super strong counterpick to beefy melee champions. But one thing that he can struggle with is when you end up against an enemy champion that can heavily kite him. Even if you counterpick and get a huge early lead, it doesn't mean much when you can't touch a carry that you ultimate. More movement speed in his ultimate means that you'll be a lot more capable of actually using your lead to bash carries later on into the game. Next up we have Twitch. He's moving up in strength as an indirect result of other champion changes on this patch. He was already one of the very best marksmen in the bot lane, but now that Jinx, one of his competing hyper carries, and Xayah, a lane bully that can shut him down early, are being nerfed, he'll be even better. While we generally advise people to stay away from Sylas when they aren't a Diamond Plus player because he's so situational, if you do have the mechanics to pull him off, this patch you'll want to abuse him. That being said, he isn't getting a crazy enough buff to actually make him pickable every single game. Instead, we think he's going to be really strong specifically when the enemy team has 2 or 3 really good ultimates for you to steal. In those instances, you'll actually get a lot of value out of the lower ult cooldown that he's getting this patch. It wouldn't be the most broken champion video without having Riot's favorite child, Riven. For whatever reason, she continues to be the absolute best performing champion in the top lane while being completely untouched for yet another patch. She's everything Camille was last season, but made even more frustrating since she has even less counters. While Riven is no doubt absolutely an OP champion, and I've been begging for nerfs for months now, the one thing that I can say is that she is really hard to play. And that's why her win rate is so different when you look at her Plat Plus performance in comparison to Gold and Under, where lower mechanics kind of lead her to actually being in the red win rate wise. And that brings us to today's question of the day. Do you consider a champion OP and needing nerfs if only a small percentage of the player base can actually pull them off? I think this is a pretty interesting talking point. Aphelios is another example of this. People would call him the most broken champions in the first few months after his release, but in reality, he had a horrible win rate anywhere outside of Diamond. Anyway, let us know what you guys think about that in the comments down below. Now without further ado, let's get back into the video. And just like Riven, another champion that Riot wants to really see doing well is Diana. Everybody knows how ridiculous Diana is as a jungler when she's meta in that role, yet they refuse to keep her out of that role. And it's not just the jungle that she does well in. She's also an insanely strong mid laner, good into both melee champions and mages. Regardless of the role you pick her in, she's an absolutely disgusting teamfighter, being able to simultaneously engage fights and nuke the entire enemy team with a good ultimate. As people finally started mastering him after the buffs, Rengar has really picked up steam big time. Not only is he doing better in his intended role as a jungler, where you could now make an argument that he's top 3, but he's absolutely tearing things up in the top lane as well. Up next we have Veigar. He actually dropped off a bit in the mid lane, but he's still doing insanely well as a bot lane carry, where I can pretty confidently say that he's the best pick in that role. The ability to completely neutralize even super aggressive kill lanes and then start winning them the second you hit 6 makes his balancing a little bit questionable. A champion that scales so hard shouldn't be such an impressive laner. While Riot has slowly been chipping away at the hyper carry meta, the one really OP bot laner that remains completely untouched is Senna. She continues to be absolutely dominant, with her basically being unbeatable once you reach the late game. Once the meta shifts to being more aggressive in the bot lane, she may be pushed out of her spot at the top. But until then, she's absolutely the best champion that you can abuse if you want to actually hard carry games as a support. It's just way too easy to consistently win or at least survive early, and no champion is gonna outscale you. Don't worry, we didn't forget about Ahri. After her mini update, she became obscenely broken, and you'd usually expect to see that followed up by immediate nerfs on the next patch or even some hotfixes. But instead, Riot waited and then went after one specific build, leaving her largely unchanged. She continues to be an absolute terror, having absolutely no real counter picks in the mid lane that actually do well against her consistently. Either she wins lane or goes even and then goes for roams with her ultimate to get fed anyway. Once you reach 2 items with Ahri, she becomes a one-shotting machine, deleting squishies anytime they're on the same screen. Honestly, there's no real way to balance her now that she has a resetting ultimate. It's either nerfing her damage to the ground and also making her unviable, or just keeping her in a state where she can just hard carry while also being a super safe pick. Finishing off our list, we have Renate Glask. She's already been a contender for the best support in the game since her release, and with enchanters as a whole being nerfed with the Moonstone nerfs last patch, her grip on the throne is tightening. Also, as we've mentioned before, it definitely seems that Riot is trying to shift things towards more aggressive laners. While Renate is technically an enchanter, she'll actually be really strong in the killing meta. She does a lot of damage, with her passive getting a lot of value against tanky engaged champions, and her W works perfectly with aggressive ADCs that just want to go bonkers in fights. And that wraps things up for our predictions for the 15 most broken champions on patch 12.8. Hope you guys enjoyed the video, and if you did, make sure you sub so you never miss out on our content like this. And remember, let us know if you think a champion is OP when only a small fraction of players can actually use them well in the comments down below. And one last thing, don't forget to check out our Discord in the description box below, where you can discuss League further or just hang out and be part of the community. I can't wait to see you guys back in the next video, but until then, stay safe, stay healthy, and have a wonderful day. Peace.